This is David Strickmatter conducting a phone interview on April 1st, 2020 for the Kent State Guardsman Oral History Project. What is your name and where are you from?
My name is Art Krummel. I'm from Akron, Ohio.
And how long and in what capacity did you serve in the Ohio Army National Guard?
I served 6 years as a infantryman, and basically I was a specialist fourth class, sometimes sergeant, sometimes specialist. It just depended on my behaving.
And what led you to join the Guard?
I got a registered letter in the mail, and my mom called me at work and said, "You got a registered letter in the mail?" And so I thought, it's going to be the Selective Service notifying me I'm drafted. So I'm going to join the National Guard first. So that's what I did. Then I picked up my letter, and it was from an insurance company that was rebating a little bit of money because my car insurance had changed.
And where were you working at the time?
At that particular time, I was working for a night newspaper subsidiary called Portage Newspaper Supply, and then subsequently I became. I went to work at the art department in the Akron Beacon Journal.
And looking back on your time in the Ohio National Guard, how do you view it?
Well, it was interesting. It was kind of fun. You remember the fun parts. You don't remember the unfun parts. But the Guard unit I was in, we were activated for a couple of race riots and a significant one in Huff in Cleveland, where there was a lot of violence, and then we were activated my memory of the Guard is mostly summer camps, playing cards, having a lot, beer and whiskey, and having fun. And
how did you arrive to Kent, Ohio in May of 1970?
Well, we were first activated right at that particular time to guard a convoy of trucks that was being driven out of roadway. During the truckers' strike, the Teamsters strike, there had been some violence, and so at Roadway Express, they had a convoy of trucks ready to be driven, and they put supervisors and scab workers to drive those trucks out of the terminal and out onto the highway. So we faced the striking Teamsters, and I noted at the time that they were scary looking because they were grown men. We were just kids. But they respected the uniform, and I was happy that they did. And the convoy went on its way, and we had to sleep in the field under our pup tents in the rain. We were pretty miserable, and the next day, which I believe was Saturday, we went to a football field called the Rubber Bowl, which was for the University of Akron's football team. And we thought we were turning in our equipment to go home, but instead we were transferred up to the Kent campus Saturday, I believe. And then we were deployed Saturday evening at the bottom of Blanket Hill, and I placed that timing because behind us the ROTC building that had been burned was still smoldering, and smoke, little wisps of smoke were still coming up. So we just, it was an insignificant confrontation. The kids were just now and then, excuse me, now and then throwing rocks or something, but they weren't even halfway to us. And now and then a tear gas grenade would be fired, and that would come back toward us. So it was not a real big deal confrontation. So anyway, later on that night, we'd moved the kids up off Blanket Hill and onto the campus, and then we formed up, and there were some squads selected to do other things. My squad, which consisted of 4 people, including and myself, we were assigned to 2 roadblocks. I was the squad leader and in charge of the 2 roadblocks. And I noticed during the roadblock there was some commotion, and I moved toward the roadblock where there was some trouble, but I was still probably 50 feet away from it because I needed to have observation on both roadblocks. And I heard this exchange between the driver and my friend who was guarding the roadblock. The driver says, "I'm going in," and my friend said, "No, you're not. I can't let you in. This road is closed, and I am manning this roadblock." And so the man kept kind of nudging forward, and my friend stubbornly stood in front of his car and would stagger back as the man would nudge forward. Well, I had live ammunition. I was the only one in the squad issued live ammunition. And at that point, I clicked the safety off my M1, preparing, if he had run over my friend, preparing to shoot at the driver or at the car. And God forbid his wife was in the car. I'm so glad I didn't have to shoot. The police spotted this commotion and drove down there with their lights on and arrested the man, who happened to be a professor, and he was drunk. So all in all, that turned into pretty much nothing. And we were then, sent back to our tents, and we slept the night. Then it was Sunday morning, and the kids and the guard it was a nice day, sunny day. I had a lot of fun hanging out on campus in Jeeps and stuff, and all the good-looking girls were hanging around. They like uniforms. And all the kids, all the young men, they were all the same age, same socioeconomic backgrounds for the most part, and they were there for the same reasons we were, to avoid, for the most part, not entirely, but to avoid going to Vietnam. The rest of that day, Sunday, passed without any significance in my mind. I rode around in a Jeep around the perimeter of the campus, just kind of making sure no marchers were coming in, no marches were going up. And then Sunday night, what happened in between, I don't remember. But Sunday night we were stationed as a skirmish line across Main Street, and there was a big gang of protesters blocking the intersection on Main and Water or whatever street it was. And then there was a riot order read to them, And then we were commanded to move them off that intersection. And we did it kind of as a skirmish line, step, 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 step. We had gas masks on, our bayonets were bared, and we had them down into the, kind of an attack mode. And some of the kids who seemed to be just observers were running back and forth like scared deer, not knowing what to do because they didn't want to be identified, particularly with the protesters. But they saw these bayonets advancing towards them, and they're dashing back and forth. This guy and girl, our age, were very scared, and I caught his eye and kind of signaled to him, and he came over, and I stepped aside and let him get out of that predicament. So then we moved the group up onto campus, and we had to march up this hill. Rocks are flying downhill, and one of my friends, the guy beside me, got conked with a rock. Rocks maybe the size of baseballs or larger, and he fell down, and somebody apparently picked him up. I was gasping for air, and every now and then I'd take a break, open up my gas mask, and take a big deep breath of tear gas. But tear gas, it wasn't all that. It wasn't all that bad. Didn't bother me. And that was that. I mean, that was about the end of that confrontation. The kids moved on to campus. We were dispersed and went off and had guards set up around our camp, but we were sleeping, I think. I forget now. I think it was by an athletic center that was since replaced. Anyway, big field. Then that was Sunday. Then Monday morning, that was Sunday night, yeah. Monday morning, I was assigned, and my squad were assigned to the sanitation plant. I don't know what road it was on, but they feared that there would be some sabotage. And it was, I think, also the water purification or the water supply plant. It was the Kent State or the Kent City utility. So we were sent to guard there, and I put 2 guys at the driveway, and then 3 of us went up to the main kind of building, just lounged around, and every couple hours, 2 new guys would go down there. Being the sergeant, I didn't have to go down there. Anyway, pretty soon we see this cop car come racing up with its lights flashing. We're going, oh crap, what happened then? They told us, been shooting on campus. Like, they didn't know. They said some guardsmen were shot, some kids were shot. Get in the car. We got to take you over to this auxiliary police station. So we went over there, and they said, just guard this police station. So we stood around there, found a Salvation Army canteen, and had a sandwich and a hot chocolate. And it was a very interesting, eye-opening experience. Police from every nearby community flooded in to this station, which was just a makeshift like a schoolhouse or a city building. And I'm sure they were flooding into other places. But the guys that were coming in, they had personal weapons that were pretty scary looking. They had some pretty fancy looking sawed-off shotguns and pistol grip shotguns, and they were in these beautiful cases. That was scary. I mean, to consider that these are the officials. But anyway, there wasn't anything much that happened there, but my unit forgot about us. So I said, well, let's go over here to this school and we'll just sleep here. Oh, shouldn't we report back to the company? I said, I'm not doing it. Go ahead if you want. But because I told you I wasn't really a stickler for that kind of regimentation. So we stayed another day, and then finally, that was Tuesday, we wandered on back to our company. And, they wondered where we were. I told them we're guarding this auxiliary police station. Geez, that was important. And that was about it. My personal feelings, walk-away feelings on this. The shooting had occurred. I personally couldn't imagine shooting into a crowd of people without some real provocation. I don't think rocks throwing was truly worth shooting kids. I can't imagine shooting indiscriminately into a group. I would never condone that, but I don't hold the kids that did that particularly guilty, because a lot of situations are very tense, very scary, and the kids in numbers could be very scary. And of course you say, well, and we didn't have significant training in those kind of situations, so we're just kids. Who in the hell, this is a big question I keep kicking around in my mind. What kind of an adult leadership, like Jim Rhodes, who was running for re-election, what kind of leadership would stick a bunch of kids in the middle of a bunch of other kids, and the other kids were mad at these other kids who happened to be in the National Guard, and then give the one side real bullets? What kind of nut job would do that? But they did it. And the guys were tired. They had been involved in a Teamster strike and rain and all kinds of discomfort. So it seemed almost like an inevitability that setting up that scenario, what outcome could you expect? Jesus. Anyway, that's pretty much my testimony, my personal recollection of events.
Do you recall if the National Guard issued any sort of instructions to its members in the days after the Kent State events?
No, I don't remember any overall instructions, but I do remember once we, we're left to kind of congregate and before official formation. Who did it? Who shot? You shot? Did anybody here shoot? We couldn't find out who did the shooting, and it was pretty slammed down. I mean, there just wasn't a lot of information flowing. But I don't remember any official position statement from the Guard regarding being distributed to the regular rank and file Guardsmen, although it may have happened. I don't remember it.
How closely did you follow the investigation and trials of those indicted Guardsmen?
I didn't follow it at all, and it wasn't. I don't think it was widely reported. If it was, having my own kind of connection, I didn't feel that they should be prosecuted, so I didn't follow it closely. I'm not a big follower of news, even today. I try to ignore as much of this back and forth and finger pointing. I form my own opinion from real events. I watch a fair amount of C-SPAN and collect my own information, and I watch some of anyway. So that's my position. I didn't follow it close.
In the 50 years since the events of Kent State, how have people reacted if they learned that you were in Kent when all this happened?
Well, it took me a long time to even say anything publicly, and I think it was a good close to 15 years, maybe more, before I said a word publicly about it. And my wife and I happened to be down on OU campus. She was giving a report on some completely different topic. Maybe she was reporting. She was a reporter for the Beacon. She might have been there to report on some whatever was going on, but it wasn't Kent. But we saw this conference, presentation in this auditorium. So I said, let's go drop in there. The time wasn't. My wife's event was not happening. We weren't a time crunch. So we went in and I listened, and the guy's presentation was pretty much straight nuts and bolts. The National Guard was evil, and all of the facts were presented were only kind of favoring the students. And I said, well, I'd like to speak up and say that I happened to be in the National Guard at that time and on that campus, and I have these other parts of this that might illuminate. So I talked much the way I did here, and finished and sat down. And there wasn't a lot of reaction from people. A few police guys, sheriff, and a couple others said, thank you for speaking that or giving that position. I think it's important to remember that there is another point of view. And I had some support in that audience, and I've not been afraid to speak up since. But it's, like a lot of things, this is it's not easily defended, and I would never try to defend what happened. But there is some things that are not said, and I think what's not said is significant. I think that that the stupid officials that let that happen hold way more responsibility than, although the guys that shot into a crowd, God, I can't imagine. I don't know how to forgive them. I bet they never forgave themselves. But to be put into that position was really not fair. Not given the proper training and proper discipline, and it just wasn't right.
How often have historians or reporters, for example, tried to reach out to you to hear your take?
Not often. Not very often. I gave this sort of interview with the Kent State Archives, and other than this, no one has really contacted me. I wrote a short description of the roadblock incident for the Beacon Journal for one of their commemorative issues. but it wasn't a long thing. It was maybe a few paragraphs. It won an award, by the way, but anyway, I'm not a writer, I'm an artist.
Have you ever returned to the Kent State campus?
Oh, sure. I taught a little bit of graphics, informational graphics, reporting, and computer Mac. I think the class is called Macintosh in the newsroom, and how graphics, informational graphics are created. It was a lot of fun, and I taught in buildings. I walked right past the sculpture that had bullet holes in it, and the parking lot where some of the kids were wounded, Blanket Hill, plaques that are up there, and the memorial, and all the stuff. Yeah, I was there. I was all around that. But it's history.
Are you still in contact with any of the Guardsmen that you served with?
Not many. A lot of them have died. You know, it's 50 years now, and they had to be in their 20s, so they gotta, you gotta be tough. This old age is not for amateurs. But I am friends with the guy who was in front of that car at the roadblock, and I'm still his buddy. And he's my friend. We've been close friends we met in the National Guard when he first joined. And so that had to be 65 or 6. So since then, he's been my friend. What is that, 70, 65, 50? Hell, I can't think about it. It's a lot of years, 50 years, 60 years.
And would you have any final comment, perhaps if there are any questions that I did not ask that you would like to speak to?
No, I think my statement in regard to the insanity of the state, Jim Rhodes, and I forget what they're called, commanding officers of the National Guard. They were pretty crazy to issue live ammunition in that volatile situation to relatively untrained kids and expect a different outcome. I mean, they were simply not very careful in their thinking. But I don't know of anything you didn't ask. I mean, I kind of just rambled on through it. I didn't leave anything unsaid any question in my mind remains.